Some of you will know part of my story. Many of you will know very little, but I'd like to at least attempt to tell you the whole story of how I got here that might help explain why I am the way I am. Why being on the mic wasn't always this easy for me, and why my greatest passion now is helping other people find their voice and communicate more persuasively to help them change their narrative and create a better life. Because none of what I do today came easily to me. None of it. It takes effort to make things look effortless. But here's the thing, people only ever see the final repetition. They only ever see your final rep. Doesn't matter if it's sport, business, or entertainment. Whenever you see someone on stage, that is the result of thousands of reps done in the dark when nobody was watching. It was Ernest Hemingway that said, "You must be willing to work, always, without applause." And if I've done anything well in life, it's just adherence to that rule. Do the work when nobody is watching. I've been incredibly lucky to enjoy a portfolio career, doing multiple things that I love and I enjoy doing. For the last decade or so, I've been a professional speaker, an executive coach, and an entrepreneur in the drinks industry. Before that, I was a professional footballer. I represented my country. And before that, I was a young, disillusioned investment banker searching for meaning. In between, I've had spells as a sales manager and a headhunter. I've been a ski bum and a server. I've gone from managing £500 million of client money to folding t-shirts and waiting tables. Ironically, I'd never been happier, but we'll come to that. First off, I refuse to accept the premise that I was born with natural talent or am special in any way. I only understand this, that first, you must want the change, really want it. Second, you must study, you must analyze and learn the rules from the greats. And third, the hardest part, is the relentless and consistent application of what you've learned. You practice, you reflect, and you go again. It worked in my football career, it worked in the world of entrepreneurship, and it works with the art of public speaking. So here is my attempt to tell that story. Most importantly, I hope that you see something of my story in you. Because if you take nothing else away from this video, and you won't, I want you to understand that if I can do it, you can do it too. As a child, I was incredibly introverted. I was shy, I was quiet, really lacking confidence in social situations. Many of you will see a reflection of yourself in that. And even if you can't relate, let's say you are and have always been a confident and extroverted high performer, I would imagine that you still want to reach new levels of the game. And no matter where you are on your journey, there is always another level to unlock. Here's why my work and my mission is interesting to me. If you have a great idea, if you have something valuable to offer the world, if you have something important to say and are unable to say it persuasively, then we all lose. And this mission of mine is really about preventing the death of good ideas. It's about helping good people with good hearts, but lacking either the confidence or the technique, step into their full potential and realize it. Because I would hate to see your voice, your idea, your story die with you, untold. If I can help good people find their voice and speak in a way that makes people listen, we all win. There is no greater waste than someone dying with their song left inside them. And I know that I can make people better. I've done it so many times before. It lights me up to see that change in people. And I want to help do that for you too. But I did it for me first. I did it for me before I did it for anyone else. I solved my own painful problem. I've done the hard work and made all the mistakes so you don't have to. Before we dive in, here's one simple truth about high performers. The only thing that separates you from them and the life you want is the work you're avoiding. If you want to change badly enough, you can, but you must really truly want it first. And you can't negotiate either. You can't negotiate over what it will cost you, what you must give up in order to step into the life you deserve. Some things need to be sacrificed. And often the first thing that must be sacrificed at the altar of progress is the self-image that you have been clinging on to so tightly. These days, I work with executives, I work with entrepreneurs behind the scenes on their ability to weave a compelling story in the world of business. How to find the central truth of their message, communicate that in a way that will resonate emotionally and move people to action. I help them find their voice. But the most important voice in your life, in anyone's life, is the voice that nobody else hears. It is the voice inside your own head, the one with which you speak to yourself. And the most powerful story is the one that you tell yourself about yourself. Here's a shocking statistic for you, one that you can test immediately after watching this video. Go into Google, type into Google, "How do I learn to?" See what the autofill is. The top search query that people are looking for is, how do I learn to love myself? If that many people around the world are struggling to love themselves, it makes it very hard for those same people to communicate their value to others and make themselves heard. So one of your most urgent tasks in life is to revisit the tone in which you speak to yourself. What is the story that you are telling yourself about yourself? Because I know that for the first 15 years of my life, that story was, I'm shy, I'm introverted, I'm fearful of conversations with strangers. That was my story, and it was reinforced by me. It was reinforced by others too. Now, your family doesn't mean you harm when they call you shy, if that's what indeed you're showing them, and I was, but you do start to absorb that belief. Consciously or unconsciously, it becomes self-fulfilling. Your thoughts begin to shape your reality. I think when most people see me, they assume that I was always the way I am today. They see me on stage, in front of a large audience. They see me enjoying myself. I look extroverted. They tell me, I'm a natural. You're a natural out there. And when they say you're a natural, I know that they mean well. I do. I really do. I'm grateful for the compliment, but there is always this part of me that wants to tell them the secret. None of this was easy for me. None of it. I wasn't always like this. It has taken so much effort to make things look this effortless. Not only was I a shy kid, I was also a sick kid, though you never would have known it because I hid my physical illness from everyone, from my parents, my friends, my teachers. Even when I finally let people in and I was diagnosed, I would pretend to take my medicine and throw it away. So I got very used to hiding my pain, making excuses, ducking out of social situations to protect myself. Fear not, this is no pity party. This is not competitive trauma. There are no winners in the game of suffering. I'm self-aware enough to know that I've had it harder than some, but a lot easier than most. In the grand scheme of things, my troubles have been relatively minor, but it is hopefully instructive in showing you the journey of self-development that I've been on since my teenage years. One of the perks of being a wallflower is that you become an astute observer and student of social dynamics. I was lucky in that my parents threw a lot of parties, a lot of karaoke nights at home, and I listened, and I watched, and I observed who the dominant personalities were in the room. I saw who wanted to speak, but couldn't. I saw how to make people laugh, how the best people made others feel warm and fuzzy and feel included. I also saw what made people tune out, lose interest, and want to leave. I had become a keen social scientist, though I was too young at the time to know that's what I was doing. So even though I wasn't speaking up, I was still far too shy for that, even as a teen. I was deconstructing. I was absorbing the habits and behaviors of others. In the summer of the year 2000, I decided that I had had enough. I'd had enough of being shy, of lacking confidence. I was fed up and I was tired. I was tired of not going after things that I really wanted. I had just turned 16. About a year or two earlier, I had finally put my physical ailments behind me, which helped a lot with my confidence, but I just missed out on the opportunity of a lifetime with some English Premier League football clubs. I was there on trial, but I'll come to my professional football career later. The sliding doors moment of this summer saw me start on a completely new path. And when one door shuts, another one opens. I was determined to walk through this one a new person. Tony Robbins said this: real change happens when the fear of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change. Change happens when the fear of staying the same is greater than the perceived pain of change. And I had reached that breaking point. I felt the pain of my unrealized potential. Because I promise you this, nothing will eat you alive faster than knowing you have potential and failing to use it. That thought will consume you until you do something about it. Many of you will have felt this way before, at some point in your life. Maybe you feel that way right now. You've had enough of the way someone's treating you. You've had enough of being poor. You've had enough of being stuck where you are. You've had enough of watching people with less skill and less talent than you getting promoted ahead of you. For me, that summer, at age 16, that was the moment I decided to stop running away from fear and start running towards it. It's the singular most important decision I think I've ever made, to completely reframe and rewire my relationship with fear. I set myself a very simple goal, a very simple KPI, one conversation with a stranger every single day. Every day, no days off, no exceptions. And I wasn't allowed to go to bed. My head could not hit the pillow until I'd had that conversation. I'd walked up to someone, I'd engaged with them, tried to hold the conversation in an authentic and interesting way. And I didn't realize it at the time, but this simple challenge, this little game I'd set for myself, was changing everything. Over time, I learned. I learned what made people lean in, what set them at ease, what shut the conversation down, what made people withdraw, what energy did I need to bring, what questions delivered the best answers. I did the work. I did the work, talking one-to-one, then one-to-many, then one-to-hundreds, and slowly then all at once, I discovered a newfound confidence. I realized that these skills can be learned. Now, trial and error alone won't get you there, of course, but I did marry it with my love of reading. You have to remember, I'm shy, I'm a bookworm, I love to read. So I think I must have been the youngest person in the aisles of those bookstores in Hong Kong, perusing the self-help section, the psychology section. The self-help movement wasn't anywhere near as big then as it is now, and I probably stuck out like a sore thumb, which is good. You don't want to be like everybody else. If you do what everyone else is doing, you get the same results as everyone else. But with this combination of study, of observing and deconstructing the habits of successful people, by putting it into practice every single day, what I discovered is that charisma, confidence, and communication skills can all be earned and learned, but you must learn the rules of the game first. More than anything, during that period of my life and into my 20s, I learned to reframe my relationship with fear. If I was afraid of something, it was probably a good sign. It was a sign that I should run towards it, because on the other side of that fear lay new skills, new perspectives, new relationships. As one of my favorite authors, Joseph Campbell, put it, "The treasure you seek is in the cave you are afraid to enter." Public speaking was the first fear that I ran headlong towards. But once I learned the principle, I started applying it everywhere. Fast forward a few years and I'm in my early 20s now. I had just graduated from business school, and through a period of intense self-study, you'll notice the theme here, I was now a qualified investment manager. This was a tough period for me post-graduation because on paper I had everything. I had everything that employers were supposed to want. And yet, I spent 6 months taking interviews. I got to the final round on many occasions, but for one reason or another, they kept going with someone else. It was an endless string, an endless chorus of no's. Hard to take. 6 to 7 months of unemployment when your master's degree is supposed to open the doors to riches was difficult to take. But eventually, after countless rejections, I made it to the final 2 for a job at the Royal Bank of Scotland. Final 2, mano el mano. Time to put those hard-won communication skills to good use. The final task in that interview process was open-ended. Myself and the other candidate were simply told, you have 30 minutes, deliver a presentation to the boss on any topic you want. Any topic at all. Just get up and present to him. I designed my presentation on 3 principles. Number 1, be memorable. Number 2, when they zig, you zag. Number 3, stories beat spreadsheets. The job was in global banking, so I made a calculated guess that my opponent would choose a topic related to the job at stake. They would talk about financial markets, options, derivatives, something of that nature, in an attempt to demonstrate their interest and industry knowledge. But here's the thing. How were we, as fresh graduates, supposed to teach this 50-year-old veteran anything new about financial markets? How many times do you think this man has heard a presentation on those topics? It would be incredibly difficult to stand out if that was a strategy. And yet, I predicted that is exactly what most applicants would do. They would play it safe. So, I decided that I would share something totally unrelated. Well, something that I found genuinely interesting and hoped that I might teach this veteran something new. A concept that was adjacent to, but not directly related to the job. And what I did was pick one idea from the book I was reading at the time. I was reading Malcolm Gladwell's book. I'm sure many of you have read it. It was called The Tipping Point. Gladwell was not as famous back then as he is now, by the way. Within that book, I chose Robin Dunbar's Rule of 150, which states that the maximum size of any high-performing team, a military unit, a school year group, etc., should never exceed 150 people. Our mental Rolodex just can't handle anymore. When you grow any bigger, relationships, trust, accountability, they begin to break down. And as a director at the world's biggest bank, I thought this might have interesting implications for him and his team. So he learned something new, and I got the job. After the job was secure, I asked my new boss, hey, what topic did the other candidate choose? He said, interest rates. So you can see why I won. However, this story did not have the happiest of endings. Fast forward a year or so, I've had the job for a while now. I've been given a lot of responsibility early on. I'm working in the high-paced world of front office investment banking. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. So why was I miserable? Why wasn't I happy? It was supposed to be the dream. I'm driving a BMW in my 20s. I'm working at the world's biggest bank, a job that thousands of other ambitious graduates would have killed for. But one afternoon, I looked out the office. I looked out the window of my artificially lit office in Scotland. It's 3:30 in the afternoon and it's already dark outside. This tan cannot be maintained in such conditions. I'm staring at multiple trading screens. I'm pushing numbers around, and it dawns on me, this isn't it. This isn't the life I wanted for me. This doesn't feel like me. I felt strangled. I liken the experience to waking up and finding yourself on a train that you don't even remember buying a ticket for. A train that had taken me and all other ambitious young men and women along for the ride, through high school exams, to a bachelor's degree, to a master's degree, to a prestigious business school, and then it spat you out at a job at one of the big banks or consulting firms. And I, like so many of us, I was living a socialized life rather than a self-authorized life, and I wanted to be the protagonist. All of my life, I had this natural aversion to authority. I have this natural distaste for bureaucracy, and none of what I'd surrounded myself with brought me any fulfillment or joy. Some birds aren't meant to be caged, I told myself. I had to break free. To be honest, I wasn't even that good at my job. I was good with clients, I'm diplomatic, I could build rapport with anyone, but I was working in finance and numbers were never ever my strength. They still aren't. So every day was just this battle, just to stay level. I was concentrating ridiculously hard to make sure I was on the right side of a trade, or I'd priced an option correctly. So much effort just to deliver a 7 out of 10 performance. And I know you can relate to this, because we have all found ourselves in the wrong environment at some point in our lives. I think perhaps the only difference between myself and most others is that most people aren't brave enough to walk away. They don't want to walk away. The sunk costs feel too high. The title, the prestige, the identity, it feels impossible to let go of. If you can't walk away, you don't have the job. The job has you. But I did walk away. I quit. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I can't say that there was much of a plan when I boarded the plane to Vancouver, Canada. I'd got myself a 1-year visa. I was going to take a year off to figure my life out, and that was kind of it. All I knew was that I had to get out into the world and find some happiness, find some joy again. So I said to my then girlfriend, now my wife, I want to learn how to snowboard. Growing up in Hong Kong, I'd basically never seen snow. I'd wanted to learn a new skill, and many of my friends had done a ski season abroad. They loved it. So I asked a few people I trusted, where was the best mountain you've ever ridden? Most of them said Whistler. So off I went. That was kind of it. Thankfully, the girl agreed to come with me. I have never been poorer than I was that year, but I'd also never been happier. I spent a total of 75 days riding on the mountain that winter. I had a front row seat to the 2010 Winter Olympics. I even got to hold the Olympic torch for a few minutes. Security was much looser back then, and Canadians are weirdly very trusting. So in the summer, when the snow melted, I got a job at a restaurant. I was waiting tables, hustling for tips. Hugely, hugely underrated job, by the way, in terms of becoming a social ninja. I think everyone would benefit from serving tables at some point in their lives. It teaches you so much about hard work, about conflict resolution, social dynamics. Anyway, at some point I was going to have a wobble, wasn't I? I was going to have a wobble because old habits die hard. And through my finance network, I took a few interviews and ended up taking a short-term position at a boutique merchant bank. That was tough work. It was tough work. Late nights, a lot of complex financial modeling, which you'll remember is not my strong suit. But I did impress them sufficiently for them to offer me a role as VP of corporate finance. A proper job. It was a proper job, the kind of job that people dream of, and devoid of many other options to remain in Canada, the country I'd grown to love. I verbally accepted the offer. But the next day, when I was due to meet the CEO at a little cafe downtown in Vancouver to sign this contract, I looked him in the eye. I looked him in the eye before the main course landed, and I told him the truth. I know I said yes yesterday, but I can't take this job. I can't take it. Because if I do, I'll be taking it for the wrong reasons. And even if you do persuade me, you'll never have all of me, because my heart won't truly be in it. He pushed his food around the plate. I think I made him lose his appetite. And whilst he wasn't happy, I think he did at least respect my honesty. Sometimes in life, we are presented with something that looks like an opportunity to be seized, but is actually a temptation to be resisted. I think that was one of those moments. It was a tough conversation, a tough choice, but it did set me free to pursue a better path. It was time for me to chase passion, not titles. After rejecting that VP of corporate finance offer, I looked around at the universe of possibilities, and I simply asked myself, what am I curious about that I can see myself wanting to explore for many, many years? I was waiting tables, you'll remember. I enjoyed F&B, I enjoyed the hospitality industry. So I thought, why not? Why not apply to culinary school? is just down the road from me on Granville Island here in Vancouver. Let's see if my love of people and food and hospitality gets me anywhere. Turns out I'm a terrible chef. So, after burning some basic sauces, I quit after 2 days. But what it did show me is that I was simply looking at the wrong side of the pass. I was supposed to be front of house, not back of house. So I thought, if not food, why not wine? I'd always been fascinated by these sommeliers who could tell you, with a blindfold on, not only what country that wine was made in, what year the grapes were harvested, what the weather was like that year, but even go as far as telling you what side of the river the wine could be from. That seemed like a pretty cool superpower to have. That seemed pretty cool to me. And by now, you know that I don't like to do things by half, do I? So I hit up Google. I discovered that the only master of wine in Canada at the time was this lovely guy called James Cluer MW. He had a wine school downtown. I told him over the phone, I don't want to do the entry-level course. I don't want to do your intermediate course. I want to go straight to advanced. He said, Michael, that's not advisable, but it's also not impossible. So that's exactly what I did. And that was a weird and wonderful time in my life. My wife would laugh as I filled the apartment with these obscure bottles from all over the world. I swirled, I sniffed, I scribbled in my notebook like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. But everything works when you work. And I passed those exams with distinction. Having finished my qualification in wines and spirits in record time, my 1-year visa was up. So my wife and I came back to Scotland temporarily, moved back into a parent's house, and it was there that I started publishing my thoughts online. I'd left Canada with no job, but I did leave with a new perspective on life. What did I really need to be happy? Turns out, not very much. Not in the way of material things, at least. I needed to be close to people I love, work that energized me, a view of the mountains and the ocean helped, and that is when I started writing, a wine blog, of all things. I had no idea where it would lead, and this was way before personal branding was even a thing. There was no LinkedIn, or at least it was very embryonic. There was no Instagram influencers back then. I just wanted to create this public journal of sorts. A few weeks later, we moved to Hong Kong. And within 48 hours of landing, I had 2 job interviews and 2 job offers. How? The CEO of one of those wine companies had read my blog. She loved one of my articles where I talked about all the unnecessary snobbery in the wine world, how it was excessive, and she offered me a job on the spot. That right there is the power of putting your thoughts out into the world. You do not need a huge following. You do not need 1 million views. You really don't. You just need one viewer, the right one, to change your entire life. So give yourself a chance to get lucky. Give yourself more chances to get lucky. She was a great boss. I loved working for her, selling to the city's finest 5-star hotels, private members clubs. It was enjoyable, sociable work. You could earn decent money. I was pitching every single day, hosting winemaker dinners. I was making good use of all of my skills as a salesman and a communicator. I thought I'd be doing that job for many, many years. But before that year was through, life had other plans for me. Ever since I was a young boy, I had loved playing football. I was good at it. Not Messi or Ronaldo good, but I showed real promise, genuine promise. It was the singular thing most people knew me for, and it helped me open doors, especially in my younger years, where my shyness would not allow me to. My boots did the talking for me. But you'll remember that after failing to make the grade at some English Premier League clubs at 16 years old, I came back to Hong Kong. I ended up playing semi-professionally. Even later, while I worked at the Royal Bank of Scotland, I was still earning a bit of money on the side. As a semi-professional footballer, I kept in decent shape, though it was far from glamorous. I continued to play semi-pro, even whilst I was juggling my new role in the wine industry. Not the most natural of double hats, let's be honest, because one job revolved around getting drunk and selling alcohol, and the other revolved around elite physical performance. Anyway, I made it work. I made it work almost too well, in fact, because at the end of that season, I got scouted, I got recruited by a Hong Kong Premier League club, and so, at the ripe old age of 27, when most sportsmen and women are winding down, I got to live my boyhood dream of playing full-time professional football. The wine job, unfortunately, had to go. If I'm completely honest, my professional football career never hit the heights that I wanted it to. There are many, many players who have enjoyed a far more impressive career than I have. But I am still proud. I'm still proud of the fact that a half English, half Filipino kid, born and raised in Hong Kong, managed to ascend to the first 11 men out of 7 million people in that city. I got to run out into a stadium of 30,000 people in China, in the stadium, wearing the Hong Kong national team jersey. And the noise of that crowd just hitting me like a wall, I'll never forget it. It still gives me goosebumps to think about it. And it's a moment that will never ever leave me. Unfortunately, my career was disrupted by serious injuries. I ended up on the physio treatment table for about a year. I made close to 0 appearances during that time. Psychologically, getting injured was incredibly difficult because I'd been playing so well. I'd been playing so well just prior to that point. Scouts from the Chinese Super League were interested in me, but that dream transfer died with it. Football was the activity that had given me the most joy ever since I was a child. It was the thing I was most famous for. And when people recognize you for something, and it's a huge component of your self-esteem, not being able to do that thing can plunge you into darkness. I won't lie, there were some dark moments during those years, and although some of my happiest moments in life have been on a football pitch, I can also say that some of the worst moments of my life were also during my time as a professional athlete. And that is not unique to me. I'm sure that if you ask any professional athlete what their sport gave them, even the successful ones, they will say that it gave them enormous resilience, enormous mental strength. And high-level sport is really a vessel. It's a vessel for self-examination. It's a test of character. It shows you, sport shows you how far you can push yourself when you think you can't go any further. And that has been incredibly useful in the world of business and in my personal life too. I remember when doing the bleep test in pre-season, in every professional team I played for, before I was injured at least, I would win the bleep test. I was always number 1 on that test, not because I was the fittest. There were people with more stamina, more pace, more muscle than me, but I would win it every time because it's actually a test of mental endurance disguised as a test of physical endurance. That test is a test of how much you are willing to suffer, how much you are willing to endure. And as it turns out, I have an immense capacity for suffering. So I remember that when it came down to the final 2, when it was always just me and one other player left standing, I would look across the line and say, not with my voice, because we were breathing too heavily, but with my eyes and my body language, I would say, I will either win this thing or one of us is going home in an ambulance. So it'd be better for all concerned if you just let me win. And they always did. They always quit before I did. I'm sure it's why many successful entrepreneurs, salesmen and women are former athletes. Because running a business requires incredible self-discipline, ridiculous levels of self-belief, a high tolerance for pain, the ability to withstand suffering. These ingredients alone are not sufficient for success, but they are necessary. Anyhow, back to me, I'm injured. The football club employing me, they're still paying me a monthly salary, aren't they? But they're not getting a lot out of me. Hobbling around on the sidelines. So I think because I have a full head of hair, I have a fairly symmetrical face, I could string 2 sentences together, they saw me as a marketable asset. And if I couldn't contribute on the pitch, then I could still contribute to revenues off the pitch. So they wheeled me out for events, promotional activities, and I used that time to get on national radio, to get on national TV as a live sports commentator. I got to speak in front of hundreds, then thousands of people at various large events, and not only through my football club, but also through my former professional network that I built through my time in finance and my time in Hong Kong. So I'd find myself hosting these large charity dinners with tables full of heavy hitters from the corporate world. Those kinds of events where millions of dollars are flying around during auction. I was interviewing some of the biggest names in sport, some of the biggest celebrities you've seen in the world of sport. This is something I'm still incredibly lucky to be doing year after year. During this time in my life, some other pretty significant life events occurred. Remember the girl? The one I convinced to leave Scotland, quit her job and come snowboarding with me in Canada? Well, she'd followed me through the wine years, she'd followed me through the professional football years, and I'd since had the good sense to ask her to marry me. Our first child was born while I was still playing football, and that allowed me to spend huge amounts of time with him in his early years. Most dads never get that opportunity to know their child so well. And I know it's why he and I are so close. We have such a good relationship now, 10 years later, because time is the greatest luxury of all. And I've designed my life, I've been able to design it in such a way that I get to be really hands-on as a parent, and my job as a father is my favorite role by far. The fact that my 2 kids love me and they know me so well is the thing I am most singularly proud of, more than anything I've achieved in my career. Anyhow, when our wedding day came around, my best man's father was in the room that day. He happened to be the chairman of the Citibank Soccer Sevens, which is the best tournament of its kind in the world. And this annual event was just around the corner. It was about a month after our wedding. When he heard me give my wedding speech, when he saw the way I held the room, and he saw me reduce grown men and women to tears, he knew that he had found the perfect host. He needed a host for that event, and despite the fact that I'd never hosted such a prestigious large-scale event before, he took a chance on me after that day. And that singular speech, delivered from the heart, is really what kick-started my professional speaking career. Because every year since then, I've spoken to hundreds, then thousands, but it all started there, in a marquee with 15 minutes of vulnerability and authenticity. I didn't play my wedding speech safe. I gave the audience something of me. And that works in the business world too. It works in the boardroom. People's inability, their refusal to be vulnerable, is what makes them forgettable. They think that by playing it safe and repeating the corporate platitudes that they are protecting themselves. But all they do is ensure their own mediocrity. You must take some measured risks in your storytelling. Anyway, after celebrating in the UK, we flew home to Hong Kong and we had another smaller wedding party there. I gave that same speech from the heart, and in the room that day was a senior investment banker. He and I didn't know one another, but afterwards he shook my hand. He shook my hand afterwards and he said, "I am so glad, Michael, that I am married already. And I've done my speech, because after that, every guy in here with a girlfriend is in massive trouble." Now, it was pure serendipity. It was pure luck that this man grew up in the house next door to my wife. His family and my wife's family, they were neighbors. You can't really account for that kind of luck. But it was a very different kind of luck that made him want to recruit me a couple of years later. Yes, I was sure to keep in touch. Yes, I made him subtly aware that I had expertise in wines and spirits, beyond just being really good at drinking. So when he and his friends co-founded and launched the Japanese sake brand, he brought me into the equity. He made me part owner and he made me employee number one. But it was mostly because he knew I could connect with another human being, that when I spoke, people would listen. And this pattern repeated itself years later. When I launched my own podcast, some of you will have listened. It's called Playing the Inner Game. I launched it in 2020. One of my earliest guests, Benjamin Quinlan, he was on episode 5. He brought me into his strategy consulting firm as a partner after we did a podcast together. It wasn't planned. I was the host, he was the guest. We were supposed to talk for about 1 hour. We ended up getting on like a house on fire and talking for about 6. After a couple of hours, he essentially pointed to the door and said, "Do not walk out of here without promising me that we will find a way to work together." I left his apartment with a job offer to become a partner and his new head of corporate training. And we've been great friends and business partners ever since. You can never guarantee a particular outcome, but you can move through the world in such a way to stack the odds in your favor. When I'm coaching people on how to present, on how to pitch, I always tell them to really bring the energy, because you never know. You never know who is in the room. You can't know where the real power resides. So always act as if there is someone in that room who has the power to change your life. Because one day, there will be. Indeed, I have no idea who will watch this video. If you made it this far, it's a miracle already, frankly. But think of your content, think of your presentations as this serendipity engine. When you bring your authentic self to every interaction, to every conversation, when you carve out time in your schedule to nurture your relationships and you put your ideas out there, you increase the surface area upon which luck might fall. So where am I today? I'm turning 41 pretty soon. I have now spent a total of 25 years geeking out, practicing, deconstructing, studying the world's best communicators, and the last 13 years getting paid to speak. I've put in my tens of thousands of reps, selling, pitching, performing on stage, on camera, on the radio, sharing all that I've learned with top executives, with industry leaders and global brands. This responsibility of coaching, advising, and guiding people, everyone from prominent business leaders that you'll see on Bloomberg and CNBC, you'll literally see them on Squawk Box. I'm their secret weapon in the background. I work on their speech writing, their delivery. You will never see me, but I'm there, doing everything from that to working with solopreneurs, to new mums growing their dream business from home. This is not a responsibility I take lightly. I know that when I advise them, Steering them the wrong way can be the difference between success and failure, between a business working or not working, between a dream living or dying. And yet sometimes I'll look around the room that I find myself in, and I'll think to myself, how have I got here? And I have to pinch myself. Not because of imposter syndrome, I've worked through that some time ago. I know they want to hear from me, they know I can add value, and usually they've approached me. But I do stop sometimes. Just to take it in from a position of gratitude. And it's good to remember how far you've come, how far this shy little introvert has come. And we often fail, all of us do, to take the time to stop and reflect and look around us. I'm incredibly lucky to call this work. And when I'm working with these people, I never ask my clients to fake it until they make it. I never ask them to be someone they are not. But I do ask them to trust the process and step into the fullest, most authentic version of themselves, to bring the best parts of themselves forward more often on purpose. And when I help them do that, good things usually happen as a result. Whether it's helping them release the shackles of limiting beliefs, whether it's making them see blind spots that they previously could not, or if it's helping them find the emotional center, the truth of their message. This work is always rewarding. I don't think I ever want it to stop, which is partly why I'm making these videos, because for the last decade, I've also been building the Japanese sake business. I've been in the entrepreneurial trenches alongside some great human beings whom I respect very much. I know what it's like to build a business from zero. It's hard. And because of it, I have been stretched for time. Any corporate workshops, any executive coaching, any speaking engagements I've had have been purely through word of mouth recommendations. I've done next to zero cold outreach. But I know now that I need to ramp it up. I need to get out there, start telling my story at scale. Not for my own ego or self-gratification, but so I can help more people and impact more lives at scale. It's time for me to start living up to in private the things that I'm saying in public. And one of the mantras that I repeat to my coaching clients is this: split focus is no focus. Split focus is no focus. So it's time for me to double down on the thing that I'm uniquely good at, the thing that allows me to be of the greatest service to the greatest number of people. It's time to go all in. Many people go their whole lives without finding their calling or working a job that they actually love. I've been lucky. I've been lucky enough to find it multiple times over. First in football, then in entrepreneurship, and now this. I think those of you who have known me for a long time through it all know that I just want to leave people better than I found them. That is what gives me the greatest satisfaction in life. That and coming home to my 2 kids. But helping other people win is what lights me up. Watching people I love and respect close the gap between where they are now and the life they dream of. And if I can do that for you, I will take that opportunity all day long. So that's me. Hopefully that resonates with some of you watching and listening. And if it does, and you'd like to learn more, you can get in touch with me via email, through my website, through LinkedIn, or through Instagram. I've tried to make it easy. Now, I can't promise that I will have the bandwidth to work with everyone who contacts me, but if we do get the chance to meet, and we do get the chance to work together, I hope these videos make it feel like you already know me before you've met me. And that will make any working relationship we have so much warmer and so much more productive from the very start. The free content I put out is created in the hope of helping you and helping others. I'll keep doing my best to put good free stuff out there too. If you've been through some of it already and you believe that I could be the one to help you, don't be shy. Get in touch. As I know all too well, it does not serve you to play small. Make the call, make the change. I wish you nothing but the best, and if you've made it this far, thank you for choosing to spend some of your precious time with me.